I'm Bobby Delaney with Ninth Paddock Creative. I'm a graphic designer and illustrator, handling A to Z what your company needs. Deliverables that you'd get probably would be anywhere from your logos and brand identity, and kind of your brand strategy, how that works inwardly and outwardly. So how people see you, and then how your employees see you and are supposed to treat the brand. Kind of developing those kind of things out. And then other areas are kind of your products and services, what those look like, what your how customers are going to see them, how they're going to be presented to them, how customers are going to interact with them, how they know to interact with them. All those kind of things go into one kind of thing for your products and services. And then from there, it's you know how you get those messages out to your customers and your clients, through marketing and advertising. What does that look like? What do your messaging look like? The taglines and the things that they're going to hear to get them to come to you and buy your stuff. Those kind of messaging, kind of outreach to bring your customers to you. What does that look like? What does that sound like? What avenues are those in? Well, it kind of just ends up being, and kind of one of my favorite main focuses and things to kind of push on, and what I want to unlock with clients. That's my main goal, is to get their imagination going, because we could take it anywhere you want to go. You know, if you have a product, you know, could be any product, doesn't matter what, you know, what packaging is that in? What does it come in? How is it? A box? Is it a bubble package? Is it just a sleeve? Or figuring out what that looks like for the customer and what their experience is, opening that. You know, everyone has, there's a reason why Apple has, everyone has a box in their closet, right? Because there's an experience there that people click onto and it means something to them. So what does that look like? Do we build out a product for that? What's the story that happens as they that pulls them deeper into your brand when they interact with that product? Or is there a card there? Is there instructions? What do those kind of pieces look like? Building out kind of that experience A to Z just with your products and services is kind of a big facet, and that could go anywhere really, down the line to content outside of that, where it could go into photography, comics, animations, wherever your mind can go on how you want to present that is where we could take that and develop that out, so you're able to custom tailor that customer experience to bring it back to you in your brand voice. There's so many different facets to how your logo is represented, and you want your logo to represent your company, but it doesn't have to be literal. It doesn't have to be an icon or an image that shows exactly what your company does. I mean, case in point, think of like Chase Bank. Like, they have that little square polygon thing. What does that even mean? There's no rhyme or reason to what that is. But I bet if you ask someone in their upper levels what that logo meant, or the reasoning behind it, or the thought process, they'd have a couple paragraphs for you. At the end of the day, your logo is really just the light at the top of the lighthouse that gets customers to lock in and see you. It's the rest of your brand identity and your brand strategy that is what makes people fall in love with your brand and sign up for it, and want to interact with it. It's your brand voice, your colors, your overall aesthetic, your values, the things that you bring to the table that make them feel a certain way. That's why Apple has the ecosystem it does. It's why people flock to the name brands that they do, Forever 21 or Victoria's Secret, or like I said, Apple or Best Buy, or you name it. People lock onto these brands for how they make them feel, not because they have a cool logo. I think it has to be kind of a balanced ecosystem or a balanced strategy behind it. There's a lot of things you could do to to go out and get customers. And there's a lot of those avenues now with social media and stuff where you can create content that projects your brand values and your brand voice and your mantra, and kind of display, and your product can be even kind of an afterthought to those, but just kind of presenting your overall value or the things you care about, will have people, grabbing on and, okay, those match up with mine, so I'm interested, right? And it's kind of one of those things where you can use that as a way to bring people in, but then on the other side of it, it's when you get the product in their hands, and the experience that they have, that gets them to come back, and then that gets them to kind of seek out you. It just ends up being one of those, especially the way I treat it, as kind of like a holistic view, and working with customers, each step of the way, and not to kind of downplay, but hold your hand through it, and make sure you're aware, like, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm thinking, this is where my mindset's at to get you to XYZ, right? And then from there, it's showing you the concepts, what to do, and then hey, we might want to think about this way, or like I said before, unlocking those doors to the imagination, like allowing that play, getting people to go, what if we do this, what if we tried that. These areas there's so many other areas that you can find within, that can fit within kind of your brand aesthetic or your demographic that you're aiming for. Something that could be a way left field, could be one of those things that, there's still that tiny little thread that connects, what your customers are into. So you could play to that. And that little bucket could bring in a whole new avenue of people that you never touched before. So finding those entry points and kind of touching on those is kind of a key component that I try to get people to clue into. So it's kind of like the notion everyone tells you not to get all wound up in the social media and Instagram kind of like success stories, and because that's the perfect thing everyone wants you to see, right? And it's kind of the same notion where you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, the very top, the flag they plant in there to say they've been there. That's your logo, that's their stake in the ground. Everything below that is their trek up there, and even below the surface there's the stuff that you don't see, the strategies behind it, the research that goes into it, the methodologies, and the things you want customers to feel or associate with your brand, and where it comes from, stories like where I got my name from, and all those kind of things kind of build up what essentially is going to be what people clue into and connect with your brand, and then that makes that flag stand taller. Ultimately, I think it comes down to where they're essentially those kind of elements help tie everything together. It builds a more cohesive package. So even if your audience or your customer or whoever isn't seeing the logo necessarily, they know who we're talking about. If I say to you, I'm loving it, you know who I'm talking about. If I say think differently or just do it, you know who I'm talking about. It's because those brands took the steps to build out the underlying facets to their brand, more so than their logo. So it's important for brands to kind of make those extra steps, make those extra moves, invest in that time and that effort to build those things out, because it's all stuff that helps customers cling to them and bring themselves to that brand. And a lot of times I think, why they might forego that is just a cost savings metric. They might just be struggling to make ends meet or what have you. But and with the release, I guess you could say, the release of AI tools and Canva and budget design services like Fiverr or a few other ones, like making it super affordable, that it almost becomes an afterthought. So they feel like they don't need to invest in that stuff. But at the same time, a lot of those sources are giving you recycled graphics that they used for 100 different other places. So it's the equivalent of, just a one-off product off the shelf, and it's not going to get you where the sustenance or the length of the depth you need it to take your brand, and it's not going to hold that weight. Yeah, I mean, just getting it done is going to kind of be the mindset of, let me type a prompt into an AI thing and cross my fingers for the best, or someone on Fiverr, tell them what I'm thinking of and pay $50 or whatever and hope for the best. They might not understand my company, my brand, my audience, or know where I'm trying to take it. They might not care. So that level of care or investment on both ends isn't there. So it's going to reflect in the graphics that come out of that. When you kind of take that time and that effort to build something out, to make sure that it can adjust and be flexible and kind of almost dynamic, you're able to find other avenues and other uses that kind of open up the boundaries so that you don't run into roadblocks, that you don't run into issues, that you don't run into legal issues. There's a whole other kind of realm of things you could run into that I've encountered people who have gone the just good enough route, and then they come to me and they're like, well, I don't have this format, or I have a product coming out that this won't work on, so I need to redo it, or I got it this way and it's not fixable, and there could be 101 other slew of things that could happen that you need to adjust for and pivot, which any entrepreneur or business owner knows. Like, you have to be able to do that on a dime, and otherwise it's going to hurt you. And that goes the same for your branding and your graphics and the creative that you have for your brand. When I was at the t-shirt company Grunt Style, it was at the end of 2020, and the year before Avengers Endgame came out, and comic books were huge. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was at its peak, and comic books were big, and everyone was there. One of the trending styles was retro comic book covers on t-shirts, and I proposed that we come up with a line of comic books, comic book inspired t-shirts that were our own stories, telling real military stories, and going deep into that and having our own custom illustration on there, and of that story, and then include an Easter egg on it where there was a QR code, and when you scan the QR code, it would take you back to a web page that told the rest of that story, whether it was by an animation, of film, or a novelization kind of written article blog, or even a comic book, web comic, and it would tell the rest of that story. Jurassic Park's my favorite movie. I saw it when I was 8 years old, for my 8-year-old 8th birthday, and I've always been fascinated with dinosaurs, but that sealed the deal, and I've been fascinated with dinosaurs and Jurassic Park ever since. So growing up and kind of running that path, always finding some avenue to relate things back to dinosaurs or Jurassic Park. When I decided to come up with my own studio name, Jurassic World had just come out, and they had a line in Jurassic World where they decided that, or they needed in the dinosaur fight, they needed more teeth. So Bryce Dallas Howard's character, makes the realization and calls on the radio, "Open Paddock 9," and that's to open the paddock where they keep the Tyrannosaurus. So that kind of like lit a light bulb in my head on in kind of triggering the imagination. What's behind it? What's in Paddock 9? That to that point, they never even said what was behind it or what was in it. And to that, even going back to the first one, when Jeff Goldblum says in the car as they go past through the gates, "What do they have in there? King Kong." It triggers you to like, what do they have in there? What am I going to see next? And that fires up that imagination to like start thinking, what if? What am I going to see? What are we going to experience? And even again to the Paddock 9. What do they have in Paddock 9? What are they going to bring out? What are we going to get to see? And where the imagination goes. So that kind of like fueled it to spin it in a way where I could then turn it to Paddock or Ninth Paddock Creative and have that be like the gates to the imagination.